Public school education has become completely permeated by this kind of anti-male propaganda. I mean, to me, public schools are just a form of imprisonment. Right now they're particularly destructive to young men who have a lot of physical energy. Okay, now I identify as transgender. Okay, myself. Okay, but I do not require the entire world to alter itself. Okay, to fit my particular self-image. I do believe in the power of hormones. I believe that men exist and women exist, and they are biologically different. I think there is no cure for the culture's ills right now, except if men start standing up, okay, and demanding that they be respected as men again.
Okay, so I got a question about that. So one of the things, we did a research project a year ago trying to figure out if there was such a thing as political correctness from a psychometric perspective, to find out if the loose aggregation of beliefs actually clumped together statistically. And we actually found two factors, which I won't go into, but then we looked at things that predicted adherence to that politically correct creed. And there were a couple that were surprising. One was being female was a predictor. The personality attributes associated with femininity, so that would be agreeableness and higher levels of negative emotion, were also both independent predictors, but so were symptoms of personality disorder, which I thought was really important, because part of what I see happening is that, I think that women whose relationship with men has been seriously pathologized cannot distinguish between male authority and competence and male tyrannical power. They fail to differentiate because all they see is the oppressive male. And they may have had experiences that their experiences with men might have been rough enough so that differentiation never occurred, because it has to occur. And you have to have a lot of experience with men, and good men too, before that will occur. But it seems to me that we're also increasingly dominated by a view of masculinity that's mostly characteristic of women who have terrible personality disorders and who are unable to have healthy relationships with men. Now, but here's the problem. This is something my wife has pointed out too. She said, well, men are going to have to stand up for themselves, but here's the problem. I know how to stand up to a man who's unfairly trespassing against me. And the reason I know that is because the parameters for my resistance are quite well defined, which is we talk, we argue, we push, and then it becomes physical, right? If we move beyond the boundaries of civil discourse, we know what the next step is. Okay, that's forbidden in discourse with women. Right. And so I don't think that men can control crazy women. I really don't believe it. I think that they have to throw their hands up in it's not even disbelief. It's that there's no step forward that you can take under those circumstances, because if the man is offensive enough and crazy enough, the reaction becomes physical right away, or at least the threat is there. And when men are talking to each other in any serious manner, that underlying threat of physicality is always there, especially if it's a real conversation, and it keeps the thing civilized to some degree. If you're talking to a man who wouldn't fight with you under any circumstances whatsoever, then you're talking to someone to whom you have absolutely no respect. But I can't see any way. For example, there's a woman in Toronto who's been organizing this movement, let's say, against me and some other people who are going to do a free speech event, and she managed to organize quite effectively, and she's quite offensive, you might say. She compared us to Nazis, for example, which, publicly, using the swastika, which wasn't really something I was all that fond of. But I'm defenseless against that kind of female insanity, because the techniques that I would use against a man who is employing those tactics are forbidden to me. So I don't know, it seems to me that it isn't men that have to stand up and say enough of this, even though that is what they should do. It seems to me that it's sane women who have to stand up against their crazy sisters and say, look, enough of that, enough man-hating, enough pathology, enough bringing disgrace on us as a gender. But the problem there, and then I'll stop my little tirade, is that most of the women I know who are sane are busy doing sane things, right? They're off, they have their career, they have their family, they're quite occupied, and they don't seem to have the time or maybe even the interest to go after their crazy harpy sisters. And so I don't see any regulating force for that terrible femininity. And it seems to me to be invading the culture and undermining the masculine power of the culture in a way that's, I think, fatal. I really do believe that.
I too believe that this is symptomatic of the decline of Western culture, and it will just go down flat. I don't think people realize. So all of these problems of today are the direct consequence of women's emancipation and freedom from housework, thanks to capitalism, okay, which made it possible for women to have jobs outside the home for the very first time in the 19th century, no longer to be dependent on husband or father or brother, right? And so this great thing that's happened to us, that allowing us to be totally self-supporting, independent agents, has produced all this animosity between men and women, because the women feel unhappy. Women today, wherever I go, whether it's Italy or Brazil or England or America, okay, or Toronto, okay, the upper middle class professional women are unhappy, miserable. They don't know why they're unhappy. They want to blame it on men, okay? The men must change. Men must become more like women. No, that is the wrong way to go, okay? It's when men are men, okay, and understand themselves as men, are secure as men, then you're going to be happier.
Yeah, well, there's nothing more dangerous than a weak man.
Yeah, absolutely, okay, and especially all these quislings, okay, spouting feminist rhetoric. When I hear that, okay, it makes me sick. But here's the point. Men and women have never worked side by side, ever. Maybe on the farms, okay, when you were like, maybe one person's in the potato field, the other one's over here in the doing tomatoes or whatever, okay? You had families working side by side, exhausted with each other, no time to have any clash of this. It was a collaborative effort on farms and so on. Never in all of human history have men and women been working side by side.